So my name's Mark Bayada. I am, or I was, until about 2 hours ago, the chair of the competitions committee. I've now completely handed that over to Sam Lee, but I am now the chair of the new members development, members journey committee that Martin Salisbury was talking about this morning. So this really fits in with what I'm going to be looking at this year on council. I also was the CP discipline rep. I'm hopefully going to get rid of that as well. But I am still an instructor examiner. I'm still the chair of this working group, and assisting me on the working group is Stuart Meacock, Chief Instructor at Hinton, Noel Purcell, Chief Instructor at Hibblestow, Nick Robinson, jumper from Advanced Instructor at Langer, and Wes from Flight 1. So we've got a good broad range of experience looking at this problem, or this whole, and trying to come up with a workable solution that's going to help, not just be a, like, for the sake of doing it, but something that's genuinely going to help try and reduce the number of injuries and fatalities that we were having. So, Canopy Working Group update for this Expo. Most of you, or some of you might have been in this chat this time last year. All right, so what we're going to do is, that some of you might be new to this, so just a quick recap of why a working group was formed. Why was one needed? Quite simply, there were just too many landing accidents. Worse than that, there's an alarming, growing trend in the number of serious injuries. Even worse than that, not last year, but the year before, there were 3 fatal accidents in quick succession, all under a fully serviceable canopy. All right. Now that part of it then starts getting alarm bells ringing, and it doesn't just cause alarm bells within our community, but even from the CAA overseeing what we do, it starts really drawing a lot of attention to what's happening, and people start asking real questions. How can this sport be safe if, even under a fully working parachute, people are still dying? All right, and that's just not acceptable. So from that, the working group was formed. So what have we done since last year's Expo? Well, at last year's Expo, I made a sort of promise to everybody that the trouble is, it's all very emotive. Once people start getting seriously hurt and or killed, it gets very emotive, and then that can lead to what are called like knee-jerk reactions. Just go straight in, bring a rule in, stop them doing this, stop them doing that. All right, but at some stage, to do the job better, it would be much better to really look at what the real problem is. All right, so we said that we would do a study to find the real root of the problem. To do that, I then looked at every single injury report of a landing accident over the last 10 years. Following my survey, or look at all the injury reports, I then asked for a members survey to try and match the statistics of those people that got hurt with everybody else, everyone who hasn't got hurt, and try and get a bit of information about what is causing the problem. We then also did a study of all the other NGBs that have taken action and done something. And we've all heard about France doing stuff, but it's not just France, it's France, Australia, Holland, Norway. There's many other countries that have already put something in place. We've then looked at our existing training systems, CH1, CH2, CP1, CP2. And then through all of that, then we've tried to decide where the next steps forward are. So if we take each one of those in turn, injury reports to start with. So in the last 10 years, there were 433 landing accidents. Of those, 32 were on what I would class as high performance canopies, but not cross-braced. So they're things like your Crossfires, Katanas, just the faster end of the market. 33 were on cross-braced canopies. 132 were on sabres. So that's nearly a quarter, or is it more than a quarter? My maths isn't so good. Of all our accidents were on sabres. So this comes back to why we've got to do it properly. So knee-jerk reaction straight away would be, let's stop sabres. Yeah, just ban the sabre, and then I've got rid of 132 out of 433 accidents. Job done. I'd have gone home, me, Stu, Noel, go to the pub, have a pint, job done. Brilliant. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So then I asked for a members survey to see what people are jumping. From the members survey, we got 521 responses, which is about 10% of our jumpers, as we found out this morning. Of those, 50 people suggest that they jump a cross-brace canopy. 70 on a high-performance non-cross-brace canopy. How many's on a Sabre? What do you reckon?
Half.
Not quite, 133. So actually, and I didn't massage the figures here, this is genuine. Actually, what it shows you is if a quarter of our people jump a Sabre, a quarter of our injuries are going to be on a Sabre. It's pretty common sense, isn't it? All right, if the percentage on a cross-brace is the same and the percentage on the high-performance canopies. So if you're going to get hurt, you're going to get hurt, probably. All right? But there is a little bit more to it. So like I said, number of injuries proportionate to number of canopies jumped. Seriousness of injuries is definitely linked with the type and size of canopy. So the faster you go and the smaller you go, the worse you get hurt. I think we probably all could have worked that out without me stating that anyway. What I then did is I then looked at the Sabre as just a unit for a number of reasons. One, because that's the one that most people were on and most accidents were on. And secondly, because performance designs have always had a very clear table of their recommendations for what size canopy is jumped by what experienced jumper. So the Sabre, most widely used canopy, as I've said, manufacturers well-defined recommendations. It comes out that most jumpers were using what I would class as a medium to high wing loading for their ability. So I put every single one of the injury reports through a spreadsheet and I decided that a novice jumper was an A licensed jumper, B licensed was intermediate, C licensed was the expert advanced, and D licensed the expert bracket. And I found for all the members survey, most people in their bracket, for the jump numbers they said they had and the weight they told me they were either medium pushing towards high end of what performance designs would have recommended. All right, that seems to be, and I think that's probably about fair. I think we all know, all of us that, like the experienced jumpers, that most people are at the top end of what the wing loading recommendation is on their canopy. Out of the 132 injuries, I did exactly the same exercise with the injury reports. And that came back with most were overloaded. So I put everybody's injury with the jump numbers through the same spreadsheet, and nearly all, in fact it was all but 3, were in excess of what performance designs suggest they should be on for their level of experience. And some of them were wildly out. There was jumpers with like 80 jumps jumping at 1.5 wing loading. Yeah, so something definitely was causing or was massively upping their risk. All right, and that seemed to be quite a common thing with all the people that got hurt. Stuart then did a survey about speed of downsizing to try and find out, like looking at it from another point of view. So he asked a lot of jumpers about their jump number history and downsize history, i.e. how many jumps they did on each canopy before they moved on to the next one. And then look back over the last 20 and even 30 years to see if there was a similar story. And compared with previous years, most jumpers now downsize more frequently. So we've now got 2 problems. We've got one problem that everyone's pushing their luck anyway, and the second problem that they're doing it too quick. All right? When you add both those together, you get potential problems. But this could be for many reasons. So we've got to be reasonable about it, and we've got to be honest, and we've got to know what we're all doing. So it might be that people feel they're more current, and that's probably true. So way back in the day, everyone was jumping piston engine aircraft. If you did 3 jumps in a weekend, you were quite happy. These days, if you don't do 10 jumps a day, you're not happy. So we appreciate that people are doing not necessarily more jumps, but more jumps quickly, so they feel more current, so then move on quicker. That does happen. All right. It might be just that more canopies are available. And go back 20, 30 years, Sabre, brilliant. I did 2,000 jumps on a Sabre 135. Why? Actually, because there was nothing better. All right, it's not because I wanted to, probably. It's just that was just as good as what I was going to get. Whereas now, I've got the Sabre, I've got the whole list of canopies. I can move on canopy every year and never run out of canopies that come off the production line. All right, doesn't matter what the cause is. The reality is that some people, and I'm trying to say this and not be patronising to people, we just got to be absolutely honest though, and just say it as it is. Some people end up downsizing too fast. Some people end up downsizing too much, and some people get hurt. And the chances are they all end up the same person, all right? So all the stats sort of back up some need to do something about it. Which then, I call this the French type system. I don't like that slide name, but that's just gets everyone's attention because it starts making people thinking that's what we're going to do. So we've got to look at something like that, all right? And let's sort of have a look at it. First of all, would it work? There's no point bringing in a system that's just going to destroy skydiving in this country. Everyone just go off and do mountain biking or something instead because they can't jump their own canopy if that system wouldn't have worked anyway. All right, so first of all, would it work? Well, this is the bad news for you guys. I was hoping it wouldn't work in fairness, but 55% of all the injuries in the last 10 years would not have happened on the canopy they happened. I'm not saying that person wouldn't have got hurt, but they'd have got hurt on something bigger and probably got hurt a little bit less, as we've seen. So 55% of our injuries, people wouldn't have been allowed to jump that canopy. So I put all our 433 injuries through the French computer to see if that person with those jump numbers would have been able to jump that set of kit. 55% wouldn't. 50% of the cross-braced canopy accidents would not have happened on that canopy. And bearing in mind, when you get hurt on a cross-braced canopy, by the very nature of what people are doing on them, they tend to be more serious accidents. Trouble is, it's really difficult to come up with a good system. So, everybody, I don't know if you've heard of the French system, it's a very regulated where you put your weights, your jump numbers in a computer and it tells you exactly what size canopy you can jump. Then gives you a little bit of variance if your chief instructor says you can have a bit. There was a bit of a introduction measure where if you'd already done some jumps on that canopy, you could have a bit of variance. And if you do some coaching, you can have some variance. But it's really rigid, and it's rigid up to 2,000 jumps. All right, and it even stipulates when you can start jumping cross-brace canopies. And that. The trouble is, it's very difficult to get the numbers right. So we're already slightly different from the French because we already had CH1, CH2, CP1, CP2. So we've got a bit of a system in place, all right? And the numbers bit can be a bit confusing. So for instance, if we take someone who weighs 70 kilograms, who's just, I guess that's about average weight, and we want them as an intermediate jumper maybe to jump a wing loading of 1. So 70 kilograms is about 155 pounds. Add 25 pounds onto the kit, they're jumping about a 180, 190 square foot canopy. We think that's fairly reasonable. Take a 90 kilogram guy, add the kit, he's going to jump about a 220. We think that's fairly reasonable. But take a 40 kilogram girl who's just come into the sport, gets her A licence, she would be jumping a sub 120 by the same wing loading. That's unreasonable. All right. So then all of a sudden we start getting people complaining, why come they can jump at a wing loading of 1 and I'm stuck at a wing loading of 0.7? Right? Because people don't understand that it's not just the wing loading of a canopy that gives it its sort of like turn characteristics and the sort of danger factor, but it's the pure size of it as well. So it becomes quite complicated to write a good system that genuinely looks after everybody. All right, and that people will understand. Other countries have cracked the nut in a different way. They've not so much, they're much more on type of canopy and all the rest of it. So we've got to look at all these things and work out which one's the right. And then the next thing would be, how do we implement something like this? And I'll talk about this a little bit later. But we've got to be, in my mind, we've got to be sort of fair to you guys, all right, and fair to the sport, where we don't want, the safest thing would be stop parachuting, wouldn't it? Just stop skydiving, let's do something else. All right, nobody ever get hurt skydiving, but that's not what we're here for. We are here to jump out of planes, and we're here to have a good time. So we don't want to bring in something that's so draconian that it just stops everything. But at the same time, as I've said earlier, we just cannot sit back and just watch people carry on getting seriously hurt or killed. So something needs to be done, and we've got some ideas about implementation that I'll bring out later. As well as their canopy system, there's 3 things that need to happen. So canopy, you've got to be on the right canopy for yourself, all right, safe kit. You've got to do it in a safe place, and you've got to have a safe system of coaching. And unless we do all 3 of them together, I don't believe any one of them will work. All right, so the next one will be the landing areas. Now, the landing areas, when I did this talk last year and I talked a bit about it, this became one of the bones of contention, and I got a lot of bad feedback from it. All right, and a bit of a lack of understanding. So what do we mean by sorting out the landing areas? Well, really, we need to be able to land these canopies at high speed in a safe area. So we need an area that is big enough to do it, just quite simple. All right. The location of it has definitely been key to at least 2 of the serious injuries. In fact, 2 of the most serious but not fatal injuries, I would suggest, are due to hazards around the landing area, people hitting the obstacles. All right, so the location of it is absolutely key. And this was something that people really took objection to last year, because they get the feeling that I'm going to say you're not allowed to swoop anywhere near the buildings, you've got to be right in the middle. Well, actually, that might be the case. All right, but that's the only way that it will be done sort of safely. But I'll talk again a little bit about the implementation of it. And the other one is the deconfliction with other canopies that everyone seems to have forgot about a little bit, because now we're worried about the landing accidents. But only 5 or 10 years ago, there was a whole spate of landing accidents in the United States where people who are doing thousands of jumps a year, who had 20-odd thousand jumps, who are members of the PD factory team, who are gods, like, you know, they are the gods of this sport, were still involved in canopy collisions, involving high-performance landings, colliding with slow canopies. I was just speaking at lunchtime with the safety guy from the USPA about this exact thing, and they have, in the States, directed to all, there's a condition of their affiliation of all of their drop zones, that they have clear, defined, separate landing areas, whether it's deconflicted by time or by space, distance, between high-performance canopies and regular landing canopies. All right, so my suggestion is that we need to do that and control it with our SOPs. So then this comes back to now, how can we do this in the UK? And then the big, straight away, the big feedback I got was, it's all right for you at Netheravon, because I'm at Netheravon, we've got the whole of Salisbury Plain to land on, you've got all the space in the world. Brilliant, fantastic. They've missed the point. So you can make any landing area, any one of our PTOs, the PLAs have to be 500 metres diameter, clear of hazards. So any one of our landing areas is big enough, all right? If you want to land in the same place as everybody else, like same location, because that's the best landing area, you do it at a different time. And you have a set of SOPs that state quite clearly that normal landings, and if you're not doing a normal landing, you're doing a high-performance landing, then you'll do it at a separate time. And I'll give an example of that in the States. Zephyrils, they've got the swoop pond right in the middle of their landing area. But you're not allowed to use it on a regular jump. You have to use it on a hop and pop. So if they can do it in free and easy Zephyrils that has nearly no rules at all, I'm sure we have got the brains in UK to redesign our PLAs to be able to do this with a degree of safety. All right, and that's what we need to do. We need to change our mindset and start doing it. So don't think I'm trying to put any one PTO out of business because they can't do it on their PTO. They absolutely can. Just needs the chief instructors and the DZOs, and we had this meeting yesterday with them, and I think everybody's sort of getting on board just to think about how they're going to manage it on their own particular landing area. It's not something that we should manage us from the BPA, or British Skydiving down. I said exactly the same time yesterday I said BPA. All right? Because every landing area is different, and we all have different aircraft, we all have different factors that we want to bring in. But I think it will be something that will be part of our affiliation, that this will be something that will be auditable by the Chief Operating Officer and the Safety Officer when they do their audits to make sure that this is happening. And that's going to be one of the recommendations. To go with that, one of my recommendations for the DZOs on the previous meeting was that we define normal landings and high performance landings. And pretty much a normal landing, I would suggest, is anything up to a 90-degree turn, even if you are doing a front riser turn, because you flow it and you do a normal sort of standard pattern. And we introduce like a nationwide sort of policy that everybody does a 90-degree box pattern to land, whether it be left or right, depends again on local hazards and features. All right, and that is your normal landings, and you do that all the time in your normal landing area. And as soon as you're going to stray anything away from that, that becomes a high performance landing, and you must do that in the high performance landing area or at the high performance time. And we're going to look at introducing something like that. So it shouldn't stop anyone doing anything really. All right. Now here we go. The next one then is the learning of CP. So now let's go on to where I believe some of the problems have been. Quite simply, I think it's just been too fast. So we introduced CP1 and CH1, CH2 10 or 15 years ago with what we had then, with the information that we had, with the canopies we were jumping, and it was a reasonable start to try and get things going. Time's moved on. We've got so many more canopies in the sky now. We've got so many more jumpers. We're all jumping large aircraft, 18 people on every load. We've got much more happening in the sky. We need to update all our training. So I think the progression just needs to be much more systematical. It needs to be broken down into even more stages, and just the training needs to be made better. I believe we need to do more repetitions at each stage. So just because the CP checklist says you do 5 these and 5 that, and people just think that's the minimum you can do that and get me CP, all of a sudden I'm doing a 270-degree turn in about 35 jumps. That is just absolutely just not the way it should be done. It wasn't intended like that, but it's not how it should be. So my suggestion is that we should be doing hundreds of repetition at every stage before we move on to the next stage. All right, so we're talking about a season of a particular turn, and then next year I'll learn the next one, then next year I'll learn the next one. And to people just starting out who think, geez, I'm never going to learn it, all right, the reason I'm saying it takes that long is because actually when I look at all the good guys, that's how long it took them. That is just what it takes. It takes time in the air, time under canopy, time of your doing your turn until your perception of it becomes the norm. So if it shouldn't feel fast, and if it still feels fast because you haven't done enough of it, you should be able to take in all the information as it's happening, and it should feel okay to you. And it's not, there isn't a wind tunnel, all right? There is no quick fix. We can't just go and chuck a load of money in the wind tunnel and learn head down and all that. It just doesn't happen under canopy. It's just time under canopy. So I'm going to suggest that we really drag out the training quite a bit. For instance, I'm talking about doing 50 to 100 straight-in approaches before you can start a turn. 100 to 200 90-degree turns before you can go past 90-degree turns. So we're talking about even people start at 200 jumps, they're going to be about 600-700 jumps before they're genuinely ready to go onto a 270. And then once we go onto the 270s, I'm talking about 200 odd jumps at 135, and then another couple of hundred jumps when you turn your back to the target at 225 degrees, and then another couple of hundred jumps at 270. So by the time you've got your 270s, you're talking about 1,000 jumps minimum. All right, but that's genuinely what it takes. And when I think back to when I was sort of trying to start all this without any coaching back in the day, all right, when I had 1,000 jumps, I thought I was good at it. All right, and when I got 2,000 jumps and I realised how bad I was at 1,000, I was just embarrassed with myself. All right, it really does take a lot of time, and you've got to be honest with yourself. And if you try and cut the corner, it just isn't worth it. So we're thinking about serious accidents now. But even a sprained ankle, a badly sprained ankle that puts you out of the game for 3 months, in the UK, that's most of your skydiving season done. All right, that's it, isn't it? If we get 3 months good weather in the summer, you're lucky, aren't you? So if you hurt yourself in May, you ain't jumping again until September. It's snowing by then. All right, it just isn't worth it, is it? Yeah, it's a case of just slow it all down, take your time, and when you get to the end result, you will be much better for it. All right, unfortunately, as young skydivers, it's not what we want to hear. It's not what I wanted to hear when I was a young skydiver. You need some old crusty like me telling you it, all right? But that is the way it is. To make it better, we absolutely need to up our game as coaches, All right, so they've got a few ideas of what to do with the coaches. One idea was just to scrap the whole coach, what we've got at the moment, and restart again, requalify people. Whether that would be practical, my guess is the same people would qualify again anyway. But what we need the coaches to do is just to change the mindset completely. So we need to be much more aware of all the human factors, everything that goes into it when we're going to do something that puts us out of our comfort zone. What's going to make us make the right decision, make the wrong decision? What's going through our mind? What actually makes us make a mistake doing it? Yeah, understanding if we're under pressure, whether we're going to do a good job of it or if that's what the problem is. So we really need to be, I believe, really learn much more about that. I don't think the coaches should be as ambitious as they are. And like I say, you can't fast track somebody just straight away. They're making a mistake to a good landing, just with two bits of information, just go and do it. It just cannot happen like that. And that's where it goes wrong. And the coaches must have absolutely a better understanding of the whole mechanics of it. So what is a high performance landing? What does every input cause? How does the recovery work? How does the effect of doing it fast or slow at certain stages? Everything. They've got to understand it. And the reason they've got to understand it is when we put all three of those together, I'll give you an example. The most classic problem that people perceive they've got is planing out too high. One, because everyone laughs at them, and secondly, because they just feel like they've got it wrong. Right? Why do people plane out too high? Well, it might be for a whole host of reasons. It might be because the mechanics of what they're doing is wrong, as I've said at the bottom. Or it might just be that as they're doing their turn and the ground starts changing like speed and size a little bit quicker, subconsciously they recover the canopy. And that, in my belief, is what happens. You do it and it feels too fast. You do it, it feels too fast. Do it another 100 times, it starts feeling a bit normal. Do it another 100 times, all of a sudden, it's like the film The Matrix. I'm going faster than my canopy. I can see it happening and I feel like I'm in slow motion. And even the fastest of landings starts feeling slow in your mind. Then I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to learn. If the coach doesn't understand that and doesn't realise that person isn't ready to do a landing at ground level yet, but starts talking about the mechanics of it, I'll just slow it down a bit, do this, do that. And then all of a sudden, we've got a real problem where people are out their element and getting the wrong information. Yeah, do you see where I'm coming from? So it's real important, and I do honestly believe that has been a factor in some of the fatalities. All right, and we've got to really up our game on coaching. So, what are we going to do with the new training system? We're going to look at possibly something like CH1, to be honest with you, that student kit, it will probably stay the same. There's not a lot to be changed on that. CH2 just needs to be a little bit more realistic. So we brought it in, like I say, 10, 15 years ago, and at that time, the reason CH2 was brought in and CH1 was because we had a spate of about 5 fatal accidents, not all in the same year, but all in very quick succession, and they were pretty horrific, the causes of them. And it was really sad when you looked at the injury reports to see the waste of life, really. And I'll give an example of one. Was a girl who the landing arrow was seen just to be rotating round in circles, and she just followed it round in circles and then hit the ground too hard and was killed. Unfortunately, with a bit of knowledge of landing arrow going round in circles, the only thing that can mean is there's no wind, so just go in a straight line. Before then, no one ever spoke about flat and level canopies. Everyone just spoke about land into wind, land into wind, land into wind. So it took something like that to move on a stage. All right. Trouble is, what we tried to do is perhaps try to do a little bit too much in one go. So when we then start talking about doing front and rear risers at CH2 level, well, CH2 should be done by people who are just coming off a student kit, even still on student kit, just coming through their B licence. So they're on big, lightly loaded canopies. Try and do front risers on a lightly loaded canopy. Canopy keeps going, you do a pull-up, and you think, great, right? You've not learned anything. In fact, you've learned a real bad skill because you haven't even learned the effect of it. So it's sort of negative teaching, isn't it? If someone's downwind on a lightly loaded big canopy, front risers is never going to get them back to the drop zone. So it's not even a good thing. So what we should try and do is just change the whole concept of it, get rid of maybe use of risers, and put more better info on what do we do if we are downwind, all right? Do we perhaps forget all this magic with risers and toggles and that and just be absolutely honest with ourselves? I'm going to miss the drop zone, so I've got 3 minutes till I land. Let's give them all the information they need for the next 3 minutes of their life to find somewhere that is absolutely safe, work out the light landing direction, the landing pattern to get into it, and land safely. All right, so it's just a slightly different take on it. I'm not saying we want people all of a sudden just go and land all around the countryside, but we've got to be more sort of honest with ourselves about what's likely to happen. So if we're going to take out rear risers and front risers though, then perhaps we need to bring in a CH3. And I'm not a big fan of that, like extending the grading system and all that, but the reason we brought CH in was to give people more information. So then we're going to have to bring it in, and maybe CH3, if it's needed, where will we put it? Maybe linked with C license, for instance. So then people, by the time they're on like your 150 size square canopies, 170s, that would have an effect on risers, that they can learn, they can use it. Or CH3 becomes a prerequisite for, at a certain, not jump numbers, but certain wing loading or something. So we'll look at that and decide what's the best way ahead. CP1, I sort of spoke about it. So what I'd like to see on CP1 is to get rid of this pressure to go all the way through. Just because I want CP1, I've got to do 270s. Because some people should never do 270s. Some people, most of us, are never going to be fighter pilots because we can't think quick enough. Some people under Canopy, with all the jumps in the world, will never want to do 270s, but they might want to do 90s and all the rest of it. So CP1, let's bring it back down. Let's just make it only 90-degree turns. So if you want to do a 90-degree fast, high-performance landing, which is anything that speeds the canopy up for landing, you do your CP1. We'll break that down into stages, like I said. As well, what I'd like to see is some sort of system where perhaps we do a canopy school with the coach, all right, of maybe 5, 10, 20 jumps, completely watched. Yeah, video landings, debriefed the lot of what you're doing. And then you go away and you either do maybe 100 pre-declared landings. I'm not saying you're going to get coached on those pre-declareds, but the idea is that at least DZ Control know that you're trying something and might keep an eye on you, all right? Maybe up to 100 of them or something, and then you go back to your coach and get some check jumps done. And then the coach, before taking you on to the next stage, confirms that you've got that bit right. Yeah, we do this when we're learning to fly, when we go solo, and then we do a bit more with the instructor, you go solo again, a bit more with the instructor. So it's like the aviation clever way of sort of slowly letting you sort of progress. And I think that it would work really well in this situation. CP2 then, that's to go on to 270s. Yeah, again, breaking down into loads of stages, like I say, with maybe a couple of 100 repetitions at every stage. So then, if it's going to take so many jumps, maybe if people don't even get the ball rolling until they're 500 jumps, they're going to be like 1,500 jumps. But some people might want to compete, and never do 270s, because they might feel that they can just want to come to the Nationals, be part of it, have a go, and do it maybe off a 90-degree turn or something. So what I'd like to see then is competition CP brought in separate, being like a separate check. So again, there's no pressure for anyone to go up through 270s just because they want to go to the Nationals. Yeah. So again, it's just to try and take away that whole badge collecting, that chasing what you're trying to do. So competition CP, what's needed and where would it fit in? Like I say, it could fit in anywhere really. And what's needed, it would be something along the lines of, you've got to be able to fly through the entry gate safely, all right, and you've got to be able to get out the water safely, all right. Most people seem to get hurt when they start losing their bottle towards the end of the run, when they know they're going to get wet. And rather than get wet, they try left or right, trying to come out the pond and get hurt, all right, or do something. So it's all about, as long as you've got the performance to do the entry gate safely and clear the water, then why not go and do the Nationals? And we're going to look with Dunkeswell, who got the Nationals this year, at perhaps doing sort of entry-level CP competition alongside the Nationals, just to like a much simpler competition. So this is the bit that you're now sort of interested in, the implementation. when are we going to do it? So the promise was it would be April this year. The reality is, it's just when it's ready. This is just like too important to get it right, in my mind, to rush into it. But what I will say is that I'm not saying all the DZOs, but it's pretty unanimous now. All the DZOs and the chief instructors, the ones who pick up the pieces when it goes wrong, they want this, and they want it as soon as possible, and they want it as strict as possible. That is the feeling of the operators. All right. I'd like to see it brought in perhaps in stages, at least starting this year. Otherwise, it's just going to drag on forever. How are we going to bring it in? Well, again, that's still not decided. So we've got a few options. We could bring it in staged, and we could give grandfather rights. So option one end of the scale, is we go for the hard Brexit, and we just say, just it, boom, done. It's in, it's 1st of April, this is what you can jump. If you don't like it, yeah, go abroad. That's option one. Far end of the scale is we're so scared of upsetting everyone that we don't do anything and people still die. Or somewhere in the middle, we could do something where we could try and bring it in. And what I'm thinking about, one of the options could be that we, as of 1st of April or whatever date we set, everyone who's already got a licence, anyone who hasn't got a licence as of that date, they will just go in the system. Their numbers will go in the computer and it'll tell them what they can jump. End of story. Zero tolerance, no exceptions, done. They won't know any better because they've not jumped and bought kit, so it won't matter. But everyone who's got kit already, one of the workarounds might be that if they can jump that set of equipment at that particular PTO, if that particular chief instructor says they can, but only at that PTO. So that doesn't mean they can go and see one chief instructor and get permission to go and jump everywhere else in the country. They will have to check in at every DZ that they go to. And what that will do is it will absolutely stop anybody going out now and buying a Valkyrie 79 thinking they'll beat the system, because they will have to face the chief instructor of everywhere they think they're going to jump. So my message is, we don't really know what's going to happen, but I really strongly suggest that, having looked around all that new Gucci kit out there in the hall, you do not go and buy something smaller just yet. All right, just stick with what you're doing, stick with what you got, and if we bring that system in, then if you're good enough, your chief instructor will let you jump it, and if you ain't good enough, your chief instructor won't. But that's what should be happening anyway. All right, so that's sort of one of the ideas. But what I will say, going back to it, it has to be a manageable solution. And like I've said, the DZOs and the chief instructors, they just want a rule. Boom, done. All right, they want it, but they just want me to be the bad guy who brings it in. But that might be the way it is. It might be the only manageable solution. We do not know yet. We've got to have more meetings, and we've got to do a little bit more research, and we've got to do some working on the numbers to make it reasonable and all the rest of it. But I think it's fair to say that you can expect a change in the training system. You can expect some sort of control of what you jump until you've got at least a couple of thousand jumps, and that may well be the wing loading of the canopy and the type. And you can expect changes on your landing areas and restrictions of when and where you can do your high performance landings. All right. Right, questions and feedback. So I am happy for anybody to email me at that email address anytime. I am happy for questions now until 4 o'clock. I am happy for anyone to grab me at any time walking around outside, but not from 7 o'clock tonight until they see me in the morning. So if you come and try and give me feedback when I got my dinner jacket on, you're not going to get any. Is everyone happy with that? So any questions now, fire away. We got the microphone. So should we do the microphone so people in the front can hear the questions at the back?
Is it working? Can you hear me? Yeah, so obviously I agree with a lot of what you're doing. My biggest question, you touched on it briefly, is around the coaching element. And have the working group looked at that more? Because I feel personally we give, or we could look at how we give the coach rating out a little bit more and then assess it when it's given.
So we spoke about this, yeah. So we spoke about this yesterday, and Martin Salisbury breached on it a little bit at the AGM. So we're looking at the other sports and the UK coaching that do like a 9, I think it's like 9 modules, and it is like nutrition, but it's also goal setting. So you start breaking it down better. It's coaching abilities, it's fault finding, it's all that. And the idea is you do those 9 modules and then you go and become an athletics coach or a football coach or whatever. And we'd look at, like Martin said, doing things like that. That's the human factors I spoke about to bring it in. And then yesterday it was even suggested that could we run, just like we do a BI course, a proper sort of centralised learning for the CP coaches, and that is something we'll look at.
Sorry, that would be for CH coaching as well for me. I'm asking the question. I think
if there's a lot of focus that's on what the everyone CP feels thing, that we need to be.
But CH coach for me, personally, I don't actually think it means much, in that we give it out predominantly the people attending BI courses and early stages, and then it's never overly assessed, in my opinion. We spoke about it a few years ago, and I think we could do more, especially on instructor courses. BI courses looking at CH proofs,
so that's something,
yeah, I didn't know whether that had been discussed.
Not really, because that's Jeff's sort of thing. So we haven't done that yet, but we can do. Yeah, cool. Was there someone else up in the front? Sorry, who else was there someone else? Go on, Steve.
One of my sort of observations is some drop zones are actually penalising people for getting out low because there's no low ticket. So I think there's a reluctance from some people to do a hop and pop when they go up high.
It is a problem.
And that's where you get conflict. So that's just a point, I don't know whether you've looked at that.
Actually, it was spoke about yesterday, and it is a bit of a problem because we're all flying these turbine aircraft now, and if you've got multi-aircraft, the last thing you need is people getting out low. And it will come down to what the PTOs, the PTOs are running their own business, and they deserve the right to protect their business. And somebody getting killed and them losing, it's serious, isn't it? It's not just business, but it's just serious stuff when people get hurt and killed that bad. And they reserve the right to say, do you know what, I just don't want it on my drop zone, end of. And that may well happen. Or they reserve the right to say, I don't want hop and pops. Maybe they'll make you pull out the door at 13, just do such a high that you're clear. There's always sort of a workaround. But it really is important that we do deal with this, because I'm a strong believer. I know Tony spoke to me that the CAA get twitchy when we start having these fatal accidents. And Martin spoke about it this morning, where all our drop zones, we all get noise complaints. We're all now getting environmental complaints, all right? People want to shut us down, all right, whether we've bowed down to the complainers or not. But then we're all also under a bit of threat of the landowner might want to sell up and put solar panels up or whatever. And you know what, when they're coming to planning permission, what we also don't need thrown in the mix is all the local residents going, they're just fed up of hearing about serious accidents and fatalities on the drop zones. It's just another nail in the coffin of skydiving. And unless we do something about it, we do run the risk in the future of our sport just not being viable in the UK. So I know it sounds a little bit like alarmist and all that, but that is the world we live in. And we owe it to our members as a duty of care, and we owe it to ourselves just to be a bit more realistic about it. And the days of just wanging around the sky willy-nilly without a care in the world, when there was only 5 people getting out of a 206, we've done multi-aircraft 18-seat aircraft on nearly every one of our drop zones, thrown in the mix with such fast parachutes. We just need better control of it, and that's really what we're doing, just trying to control it a bit better.
The other thing is that I'm a Canopy coach. I couldn't give anybody any instruction on landing fast canopies, but I still hold that rating. So maybe when you're looking at the coaching, you somehow grade what coach...
Yeah, maybe it needs breaking down even more. We could look at that. Yeah.
That was my point. I think a difference between teaching flying parachuting for instructing and coaching canopy flight, whether it be CH or CP, are two different things. I think there needs to be a bit more of a divide there.
Yes, mate.
So I think
Yes,
I think when you talk about drawing out the progression, the CP progression, how does downsizing or changing Canopy integrate to drawing out the CP training? Are you talking about doing hundreds of 90s on one canopy,
Yeah.
and on the same canopy,
Yeah.
then progressing,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm talking about your worst case, my best case, and that is, from a safety point of view, that if you downsize, you pretty much
start
mark
again,
time
start from scratch.
and start, not necessarily go back a level, but mark time, and then so if we say 200 repetitions and at 190 you downsize, you don't in 10 jumps then go and start doing a 270 and progress. You then sort of so there'll be some sort of link with currency and with number of jumps on canopy, I think. Yeah.
Sure, I think it's
But
just a
any
point
good
to be
coach-
considered before implementation.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But that's why we're not ready to implement it, because genuinely there's so much of this that it's just very, very difficult just to say, right, we're ready yet, because we're not. What we've done so far is try and get agreement, which we've got from STC and from the DZ operators, that they like the way we're going, that the framework is there, that is what they're going to agree with. So then, now we can fill in the pieces and put the training part of it in and write the manuals. Yeah. Amy?
Thanks, Harry. Yeah, it's working. It's more of an observation than a question, but I definitely think your opinion would be grateful. I'd be grateful for your opinion. So you say time with the chief instructor, they check your equipment, check your experience, and give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down according to their SOPs and in conjunction with the BPA stipulations for canopy sizes, etc. Sorry, my bad, BS. But that's all very well when you first arrive at a drop zone. And what about subsequently? Because it's a change in culture, and people not going, oh yeah, I've done that many jumps on this, I can land in what I consider to be all conditions, I think I'm ready to downsize. Are there going to be, do you recommend that there be SOPs for, are you considering changing canopy? Are you considering downsizing? The
Yes.
prerequisites for that? Because there's undoubtedly going to be cases where you don't know until it's too late, heaven forbid.
Yeah, definitely. Linked with all this is just the whole concept again of the giving a bit of respect back to the chief instructors, that they need to know what's going on their patch. So any changes, I would expect that they're written into SOPs, that people know that they need to again go and sort of report in and notify them. Yeah. Is there anything else? Got 5 more minutes. Go on.
Just when you touched on talking about the kind of potential French system, how it would be brought in, potentially
Yeah.
staged, potentially grandfathered, that kind of stuff. Is that CP changes as well?
Be more specific. What's your
When you were talking
concern?
about it, you were talking
Yeah.
about it in the context of canopy sizing.
Yeah.
Are the CP changes going to be the same, like grandfathered, for example?
Well, anyone who's already got CP1's already doing 270s. So they're already over and above CP1, but not at that level. So we'd suggest that we do some sort of, we did talk about that, about whether they, rather than just get given a sticker, do a course, and then if they're good enough, get the sticker sort of thing. So a little bit of a chance of grandfather, but absolutely not a guarantee of it, because they might not be up to it. Yeah. Is that, you got a question? Sorry, mate. Go on, Ali. Ruin my day.
I was just going to ask, what about people who come from outside of the UK?
So again, the American guy asked me that exact question. And that would tie in with sort of the way we treat people who are outside of the system, really. And so, for instance, if we got foreign nationals come in, if they can show logbook evidence of what they've done, and perhaps that, you know, will demand slightly more jumps, then maybe we can look after them as well. So we will look at that. Yeah, go on.
So a couple of the stickers.
Yeah.
Currently CP1, if you've got a D license, you don't need it. CP2 you do.
Okay.
Are you
So,
going to remove that?
yeah,
grandfather?
so I've already been asked by one of the chief instructors to look into it, but it's not really the remit of this working group. So, for those that don't know, if you've got your D licence, you don't need any stickers, apart from JM1 actually. All right, but that's not the case. They're suggesting that that is just an old idea and wildly out of date, not just for CP, but for things like angle flying and a lot of the free flying stuff. So that might be a recommendation that we go back to STC to get rid of that whole clause. All right, but we haven't in depth sort of spoke about it yet, but I have been approached to look at it.
And then also larger than 270 tons aren't in those.
So once you're over 270, in my mind, you've learnt you're in your own time. You're high if you had a little bit on, you know. So sooner or later, we can't just keep going because then someone will invent a sort of like just get out the door and just want to do God knows what, like 3,000 degrees, and we'll have another sticker for that. So yeah, 270. Once you're above 270, you're up there in the thousands of feet. It's you know, it's big boys from there, I think. Is that it?
One more.
Oh.
With regards to canopy classification,
Yeah.
worry as technology evolves, there'll become a blurring of the lines of what's an acceptable canopy.
Well, that has already happened. So that is like the normalisation of deviance or whatever we call it. And now it's absolutely acceptable for a lot of people to be on a Sabre 135 or a Sapphire 129 at less than 200 jumps, isn't it? Yeah. All right, where it wasn't back in the day. So to make sure that that doesn't happen, we've already spoke about it, and this would have to be some sort of annual review of the system to make sure that it's keeping up with technology, and or every time another major manufacturer introduces a new canopy on the market, we have a panel that sits down and decides where that fits in. So yeah, we have spoke about that. All right. So that's it, I think. I'm out of time. Email address, if you've got anything, send it to me. All right, and then we'll keep you updated with any moves on.